It was a cold, gray morning in New York. A heavy fog clung to the city like a tightly held secret. The military courthouse on Governor's Island stood like a granite fortress where stories were judged more by convenience than by truth. Inside, the air smelled of strong coffee and silent tension. The walls, lined with portraits of decorated war heroes, seemed to watch quietly as fate unfolded. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent. But inside, everything followed strict military order. Rows of chairs perfectly aligned, uniforms flawless, and whispers laced with speculation. At the center of it all, handcuffed, but with his head held high and posture unshaken, stood Commander Lucas Blake. Just 24 years old, a son of Brooklyn and a U.S. Air Force pilot, he carried the calm of someone who had battled both storms in the sky and storms within the system. His dark skin stood out against his flight suit, and his onyx eyes scanned the courtroom without an ounce of fear. His neatly trimmed hair spoke of discipline, yet his face was a map of exhaustion and quiet defiance. He didn't say a word. His silence was deliberate, an act of resistance, a manifesto. Charged with serious insubordination, few knew, or chose to ignore, that his so-called defiance was in fact an act of courage. Lucas had refused to obey a radio command that would have endangered civilian lives. Worse yet, for the higher-ups, he had exposed falsified mission reports designed to cover up the mistakes of superior officers. Now he was paying the price for speaking the truth. The military prosecutor, Lieutenant Colonel Davies, a man with a chiseled face and a stare that already felt like a verdict, arranged his papers with steady hands. On the other side, the public defender, Lieutenant Miller, a young attorney, flipped through documents with the quiet resignation of someone who didn't expect to win. The judge, a retired major, kept a neutral gaze, or at least one carefully trained to appear that way. Lucas took a deep breath. He knew that to most in that room, he was just an example, a fearless black kid who had dared to disobey. But he also knew he wasn't alone, even if no one had walked through that door yet. The sound of the gavel echoed. The trial was about to begin. But fate hadn't played its final card. Lucas Blake was born in Harlem, New York, a neighborhood pulsing with the energy of resistance and resilience. His mother, Ilara, was a craftswoman and a fierce community activist. His father, Jamal, drove a city bus and had a deep love of aviation, even though he never had the chance to fly. It was Jamal who once pointed to the sky and told him, "Son, up there are no walls. You can go wherever you want." From that moment on, Lucas dreamed of controlling the skies, of being the force behind the machine. While other kids played ball in the streets, Lucas collected jet models and studied aviation history at the public library. At 10 years old, he made a vow to himself, "I'm going to be a pilot, and I won't ask permission from anyone." During his teenage years, he faced skepticism from teachers and classmates who couldn't imagine a black kid flying fighter jets. But Lucas stayed focused, determined. He earned a scholarship to the United States Air Force Academy, where he quickly learned he'd have to be twice as good as his peers and 10 times better than the white cadets. He excelled in everything: flight strategy, endurance, tactical operations. But even his brilliance couldn't shield him from injustice. He watched less capable cadets get promoted. He watched racism get swept under the rug in the name of discipline. Still, he endured, and he flew. Lucas graduated among the top of his class, praised for his performance, but received no invitation to the Academy's gala dinner. It was as if his success had to be dimmed, like there was a ceiling to how brightly someone like him was allowed to shine. In the years that followed, Lucas served in international missions, saved lives under enemy fire, and was awarded 3 commendations. Quietly, he kept records, names, dates, incidents. He documented everything. The final blow came during a mission in a conflict zone overseas. A commanding officer ordered him to ignore a critical technical alert on a military transport aircraft. Lucas refused. He saved lives, but violated the chain of command. And when he presented evidence of gross negligence, he discovered something painful. The system didn't care about truth. It cared about loyalty. He was charged with insubordination, stripped of his wings. Now he stood in court, on trial. Lucas appeared to be alone in that courtroom. No high-ranking officials came to his defense. None of his superiors spoke on his behalf. Only silence, institutional silence. And yet, there he was, tall, handcuffed, unbroken, as if his very presence whispered, "The truth will fly, even if you try to cage it." But there was something no one in that room knew. Before his arrest, Lucas had sent a complete report packed with evidence to the office of someone rarely mentioned these days, yet immensely powerful, Admiral Elias Rutherford, a veteran of 3 wars, a man whose name was synonymous with integrity. He and Lucas shared a connection, something unspoken from the past. And if he decided to respond... Military prosecutor Lieutenant Colonel Davies rose from his seat, walking slowly toward Lucas. He wasn't there just to present facts. He was there to dismantle him. "Commander Blake," he began, his voice oozing false civility, "your conduct is disgraceful. You don't come from a proud military lineage. You don't understand the weight of hierarchy, what it means to serve something greater than your ego. While the rest of us learned about duty and honor, where were you? Harlem, a place where discipline is a foreign concept?" The courtroom stirred with a quiet murmur. A few officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, visibly uneasy with the personal attack. Lucas, however, didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the prosecutor, steady and unreadable. Davies pressed on, his voice growing louder, sharper. "Your silence now is a confession. You have nothing to say, no plea, no remorse. Your so-called report, a pile of baseless accusations, only shows your arrogance. You think you're bigger than the United States Air Force?" He stopped, waiting, baiting. Judge Colonel Peterson cleared his throat but remained silent. Everyone was expecting Lucas to break, to shrink, to beg. Instead, Lucas lifted his chin and spoke, for the first time since the trial began. His voice was calm, quiet, yet it hit like a heat-seeking missile. "My confession is in the report you refuse to read, Lieutenant Colonel. My loyalty is to the Constitution, not the corruption you're protecting. And the only arrogance here is thinking you can bury the truth forever." The silence that followed wasn't shame. It was shock. The words had landed, bold, reckless, and dead on. A junior officer in the front row, one who had served alongside Lucas, subtly nodded, a silent show of approval. The seed of doubt was just being planted. The silence in the courtroom was razor-sharp. The judge read the formal charges aloud, each word landing like a nail in the coffin of Lucas Blake's reputation. The prosecutor, voice confident, accused him of dishonoring the institution. Lucas remained silent, not out of weakness, but by design. He knew this was theater. Every move, every glance, a performance. Outside the courtroom, two officers exchanged nervous texts. There were whispers, someone important might be coming. But nothing was confirmed. The sergeant at the entrance glanced at his watch. Inside, the trial followed its script until the sharp sound of the courtroom door swinging open echoed across the chamber. All heads turned. Standing in the doorway, hands behind his back and eyes like steel, was Admiral Elias Rutherford. Full dress uniform, medals across his chest, white beard precisely trimmed, posture upright and commanding. At 68, he still exuded the kind of presence that demanded silence without a word. No one had expected him. The judge struggled to keep composure, his hand trembling slightly on the gavel. The prosecutor swallowed hard. Lucas looked up. Rutherford walked through the aisle slowly, stopped next to the defense, offered a brief salute, and said in a deep, unwavering voice, "I request permission to intervene as a voluntary witness. I was the commanding officer who oversaw Commander Blake's actions in 5 operations. I also bring additional evidence that this court has not reviewed." The judge couldn't deny him. Rutherford's very presence shifted the axis of the courtroom. His rank and record weren't just impressive, they were untouchable. "The court grants Admiral Rutherford the floor," the judge declared. "All submitted materials will be added to the record." The murmurs that followed felt like the first winds of a coming storm. Rutherford turned to Lucas. His eyes said, "It's our turn now." And in that moment, for the first time in days, Lucas breathed like a man who could see the sky again. Admiral Rutherford stepped to the witness stand. "This court was convened to judge Commander Lucas Blake for insubordination. But the true insubordination here is against the truth." The prosecutor shot up. "Your Honor, I object. The Admiral is making political statements." "Sit down, Lieutenant," the judge barked, his tone harsher than he had intended. He knew this was bigger than all of them now. Rutherford continued, 28 days ago, I received a confidential report from Commander Blake. It included internal records, audio files, and original mission reports that were tampered with by senior officers. The evidence proves that Commander Blake acted to protect civilians based on sound judgment and technical protocol. The documents this court received were altered. The officers responsible are now under internal investigation." The prosecutor paled. Rutherford locked eyes with him. "Lieutenant Garrison, your entire case was built on incomplete evidence. You were either deceived or you chose not to look." The judge called for an immediate recess to review the new material. During the break, Lucas was escorted to a private room with his defense attorney. But before they could speak, Rutherford entered. "You saved my life," he said. "During that rescue mission over the Arabian Sea, you were the co-pilot. When the commander froze, you took control. If you hadn't, we would have lost everyone on board." Lucas gave a half smile. "I remember. I also remember my name wasn't mentioned in the official report. I've regretted that every day since, and I'm here now to make it right." Hours later, the courtroom reconvened. The judge took his seat, face stern and unreadable. "After reviewing the new evidence," he said, "this court acknowledges the validity of Admiral Rutherford's claims. The military tribunal hereby suspends all charges against Commander Lucas Blake and orders the opening of a formal investigation." Gasps swept through the courtroom, but the most shocking moment was yet to come. Rutherford stood once more. "Based on my authority, I formally recommend that this court reinstate Commander Blake's rank, and more than that he be promoted to squadron captain, the post he was nominated for and unjustly denied." The judge hesitated, then looked directly at Lucas. "This court accepts the recommendation." The weight of the words took a moment to land. When they did, Lucas didn't cry. He simply closed his eyes for a second, as if feeling the sky open again above him. And when he opened them, he knew this wasn't just a personal victory. It was a crack in the wall of silence. The courtroom emptied into a silence unlike before, heavy with shock, and deeper still with reflection. Officers passed by Lucas with their heads lowered. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within 2 hours, both military and civilian media had picked it up. Black airmen cleared after Admiral's intervention exposes corruption scandal. At the base where Lucas had once served, the hallways fell quiet. Those who used to whisper now spoke in hushed, guilty tones. Lucas declined interviews. He wasn't after fame. He had only ever wanted justice. In the days that followed, he focused on one thing: preparing to return to duty. But the moment that left a mark on history came a week later. Lucas walked through the gates of Dover Air Force Base, not as a defendant, not as a number, but as Captain Blake. New uniform, medals on his chest, head high. As he stepped onto the base, spontaneous applause erupted from the ranks of new recruits. No speech, no grand entrance, just a black man walking with quiet dignity through a place that once tried to shackle him and now stood to salute him. The sky that morning was a crystal blue, no clouds, as if the world itself had washed its face after a long and violent storm. Lucas walked alone across the tarmac, hearing only the steady rhythm of his boots on concrete. He thought of his childhood in Harlem, of his father pointing to the sky. "Up there, son, no one can hold you down." He climbed slowly into the cockpit of the fighter jet, slipped on his helmet, ran his fingers over the controls, and just before takeoff, he looked out at the horizon. There was no fear anymore, only purpose. When the jet roared into the sky, Lucas wasn't just a pilot. He was a symbol, a voice, and echo. And far below, in the courtroom where he once sat in chains, the sound of his footsteps still lingered, footsteps that would never be erased. Did this story move you? Then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps us keep these voices alive.